ਸਤਿ ਸ਼੍ਰੀ ਅਕਾਲ। ਤੁਸੀਂ ਦੇਖ ਰਹੇ ਹੋ ਪੰਜਾਬੀ ਲਿੰਕ ਤੇ ਮੈਂ ਤੁਹਾਡੀ ਆਪਣੀ ਸਨੇਹਾ। ਅੱਜ ਅਸੀਂ ਪਹੁੰਚੇ ਹੋਏ ਹਾਂ ਕੈਲਗਰੀ ਨਾਰਥ ਈਸਟ ਦੇ ਟੈਂਪਲ ਕਮਿਊਨਿਟੀ ਐਸੋਸੀਏਸ਼ਨ ਹਾਲ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ CPP ਕੈਨੇਡਾ ਪੈਨਸ਼ਨ ਪਲਾਨ ਨੂੰ APP ਅਲਬਰਟਾ ਪੈਨਸ਼ਨ ਪਲਾਨ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਕਨਵਰਟ ਕਰਨ ਲਈ ਕਿਹਾ ਜਾ ਰਿਹਾ ਅਲਬਰਟਨਸ ਨੂੰ। ਸੋ ਇਹਦਾ ਫਾਇਦਾ ਕੀ ਹੋਏਗਾ CPP ਤੋਂ APP ਵਿੱਚ ਆਉਣ ਦਾ, ਇਹ ਤਾਂ ਆਉਣ ਵਾਲਾ ਸਮਾਂ ਹੀ ਦੱਸੇਗਾ। ਪਰ ਰੇਚਲ ਨੋਟਲੇ ਵੱਲੋਂ ਅੱਜ ਇਹ ਇਵੈਂਟ ਅਵੇਅਰਨੈਸ ਇਵੈਂਟ ਇੱਥੇ ਆਰਗੇਨਾਈਜ਼ ਕੀਤੀ ਗਈ ਹੈ। ਆਓ ਦਿਖਾਉਂਦੇ ਹਾਂ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਇਸ ਪ੍ਰੋਗਰਾਮ ਦੀਆਂ ਝਲਕੀਆਂ।
Thank you very much for joining us here despite of this harsh weather today. I would like to request people standing at the back, if they can come and take seats, please. We will get started soon. I want to acknowledge that we are gathered today on the traditional territory of the signatories of Treaty 6, and I acknowledge the many people who share deep connection with this land. Once again, thank you very much for being here. I am Permeet Singh Boparai, your MLA from Calgary Falconridge, and I will be acting as your MC this evening. I want to start off with a few important ground rules. Soon, we will open the town hall to everyone who would like to speak. If you would like to speak, please put up your hand, and either Matt or Pavitt or Gurinder, Kathleen, will acknowledge your request and make their way to your seat with the microphone. We have so many people here today, so we want to get through as many speakers as possible. So please keep your comments a bit shorter. We know this is a very controversial topic which we are talking about today, about the CPP. Our offices are being inundated with emails and phone calls from Albertans who have strong opinions about the UCP's plan to withdraw from CPP. I get that. It won't surprise you that I also have strong feelings on this topic. And I encourage people on both sides to speak so we can hear different points of view. But I ask that we listen to each other and treat each other with respect. Please refrain from arguing and yelling. We want everyone here to feel comfortable speaking without retaliation. As well, we have zero tolerance for threatening or insulting language. We are also available to translate questions in Hindi, Punjabi, or Urdu if needed. Now I would like to introduce a couple of my colleagues who have also a thing or two to say about this issue. We have a great group of our Alberta NDP MLAs joining us tonight. Please join me to welcome Irfan Sabir, MLA from Calgary, Bunner-McCall. Cord Ellison from Calgary Foothills. Gurinder Broad from Calgary Northeast. Sunil Kayandi from Calgary Elbow. Kathleen Ganley from Calgary Mountain View. Rocky Pacholi from Edmonton Whitemud. Sarah Hoffman from Edmonton Glendora. And we got Kenneth Hermanko as well from Calgary. And of course, the leader of the Alberta NDP, Rachel Notley. To kick things off, I will pass the mic over to Irfan Sabir.
Thank you. Thank you, Parveet, and thank you, everyone, for being here, joining us here this evening. As Parveet mentioned, we are here to talk about the UCP plan to, dismantle the CPP and create an Alberta pension plan. They didn't seek mandate for it. They don't have mandate for it, but they just want to push ahead with that. So we want to talk about it, but more importantly, we want to listen from you because that's what matters. It's your retirement security. We want to hear directly from you what you think about the UCP plan. As Parmeet said, that we are here to listen. Whatever your opinion is, we will listen. All we request is that be mindful and respectful of each other's opinion, which may differ from each other as well. Last week, the UCP government passed a bill, Bill 2, which will allow them to move ahead with their plan to dismantle the CPP and create an Alberta pension plan. So far, we have heard from thousands of Albertans, like literally thousands of Albertans, through an online survey and through town halls like this from across the province. And an overwhelming majority of Albertans have been opposed to leaving the CPP. They want to stay in the CPP. And last week, UCP's Minister of Finance and the person who's leading their engagement on this plan, Jim Denning, they provided an update, and even they admitted there that Albertans are opposed to their plan to leave the CPP. But nonetheless, they are moving ahead. They passed the Bill 2 that will give them the tools to move ahead with their plan. And throughout this, they never had an in-person engagement. Not even once that they have town hall like this. Because they know what Albertans have to say about this. And now they are saying they were waiting for more information from the federal government to have some concrete plans on this. And so far, they have not provided any information. There are a lot of unknowns, and yes, yet the UCP wants to press ahead with their plan to create an APP, Alberta Pension Plan. During the session last month, every single day, we will extend an invite to Premier, to Nate Horner, the Finance Minister, that if you're not holding your own town hall, we can save you expense and time. We will hold one. Just show up. And they have not yet sent it for an offer to join us. So I have my colleague, MLA for Calgary, Samir Kayande here, who has a background and experience in finances, knows these things way better than I do. So I'll pass things over to him to explain how we got here, what their plan is, what the risks are associated with it, and from there then we will move towards Rachel and then questions.
Thank you very much, Irfan. I really want to acknowledge that we've got standing room only here for a town hall to talk about your retirement security, and I think it's amazing that you all came here to participate in democracy, and I'm incredibly moved looking at all of you here. I want to give you a quick summary of how we got here in case you haven't been following along, and so we can all start from a basic set of facts. So the idea of the idea of an Alberta pension plan is not new. It's an idea that dates back decades. And every time it has been brought up, Albertans have turned it down, including Ralph Pine and including the man who's currently leading the panel to get us out of the CPP, Jim Dinning, who is responsible for the CPP in large part being as safe and secure as it is now. Every time it's been brought up, Albertans have turned it down, but it was recently revived with the UCP's Fair Deal panel. The panel acknowledged that leaving the CPP was not supported by most Albertans, but suggested it should be pursued anyway. The panel also estimated that Alberta would be entitled to anywhere between $40 to $70 billion if the province left the CPP. Now, that's not free money. That is money that Albertans have put into the Canada Pension Plan to fund our retirements in the future. Right? And so that's very important, is that they said, well, it should be about $40 to $70 billion is about what we need to do that. Now, you fast forward a couple of years, and the ECP has released a report now claiming that Alberta is now entitled to $334 billion, or half the current funds in the CPP, for about 12% of the population. In the same report, they admit that Albertans it's the same report, they admit that Albertans don't have any confidence in because the number is absolutely absurd. If everybody in every province in Canada used the same formula, then the call on the CPP funds would be greater than the total value of the assets. And that's how we know. You don't need to be an expert in this to know that that is nonsense. Economists and pension experts have been quick to point out that the number is not realistic. It's not just economists that have expressed opposition, it's British Columbia's Premier, Newfoundland and Labrador's Premier, the Calgary Chamber of Commerce, the majority of the members of the Alberta Chambers of Commerce, the Business Council of Canada, the Canadian Federation of Independent Business, a very large and very effective lobby for small business organizations. They don't like it. The National Payroll Institute, seniors groups, and organized labor have also been critical of the plan. And even Pierre Poilievre thinks it's a bad idea. And yet the UCP continues to push ahead at this time. They even launched a multi-million-dollar ad campaign to convince Albertans it's a good idea, using your money to convince you that this bad idea is something that you should be supporting. Yeah. That's why we're here today. Continue consulting with you and make sure your voices are heard. For more on this, I'll now turn it over to our leader, Rachel Moffey, to say a few words and to lead the discussion.
Well, thank you so much, Samir. Thank you, Irfan. Thank you, Parmeet. Thank you to all our other MLAs who are here. And most importantly, thank you to all of you folks for coming out tonight. This is, if I'm not incorrect, our 5th town hall that we've had since we committed that we would start having town halls. And we plan to announce a number of town halls, additional dates and places commencing next week, or the announcement will roll out next week, so stay tuned. But it's really important that we continue to have these meetings, because as much some of you and some people who might have planned to be here who are now not, might have actually seen reports in the news from last week where there was a headline saying UCP pauses CPP. And the first thing that I want to get out to folks, no matter what your position on this is don't buy it, okay? They ran in the election and they refused to talk to people about the CPP. They refused to answer questions about it during the election. They said, we will answer questions about this because we're going to have a referendum. And as Irfan just said, they passed a bill last week to make sure that any referendum that they have is not binding on them. So what that means is that even if they don't convince you that it's a good idea, they themselves remain convinced that it's a good idea. And even though they said it was paused, they are still running ads with your money to convince you about a set of facts and figures that we can talk more about during this conversation. So please, as much as it's comforting to go, oh, this particular thing that I might have been worried about is not a problem anymore, don't trust them. It continues to be a problem, and they are not done with this issue. So I say all that in order to reinforce how happy we are that you are all here, notwithstanding their attempt to try and get everybody to stop thinking about the issue. So the Bill 2, which they passed last week, they called it the Pension Protection Act, does nothing of the sort. It does not protect anyone's pension. A number of our caucus members here put forward multiple amendments to the legislation to provide at least a few assurances to people. We tried to make sure that they would hold the referendum before they provided any notice to the federal government of an intent to leave the CPP. They voted down that amendment. We tried to make sure that the results of the referendum would be binding on the government. They voted down that referendum. And we tried to make sure that all funds in the pension fund, now, but also funds that were put in the pension in the future, would only be used for pension investments. And they voted that down. So having done all those things, it then brings into question whether or not this act was really about protecting your pension. So we're very concerned about that. So that brings us to this meeting, and that's why we're having this discussion. And even though so far you've just heard all of us talk, this really is about us hearing you. Truly, it is. We'll get to you, I promise. And because what we want to do is hear about your concerns, hear about the issues that matter most to you in this conversation, hear about your opinions, whether you are opposed or whether you are in favor. This is our attempt to give the kind of in-person conversation that the UCP is not agreeing to do right now. So, we handed out handouts to folks as they came into the room. And on those handouts are what I refer to as a broad list of categories of information that we'd like to get from you, opinions we'd like to hear from you on. And they have examples of questions that, we'd like to hear the answers from you, what your answer would be to these questions. And you don't have to answer every question, and in fact, you can answer none of the questions. And you can just come in and tell us what you think about the thing that may not be mentioned on this. But this is up there to give you a bit of a guide to some of the components of this discussion so that we can hear from you. So you'll see we have a category about, do you feel that you've gotten adequate public information and adequate consultation? What do you think about the idea of a referendum? Do you trust the referendum? Should it be binding? What about the question that is actually part of the referendum? Do you want input on that? Benefits, premiums. Do you want your benefits to go up, to go down, to stay the same? And to do that, would you be willing to pay higher premiums? Or is having lower premiums more important to you? Fund management. Who should manage it, the pension? Should it be stable, secure? Should the pension be put towards building Alberta's economy, even if that means greater risk? What's your priority there? And then decision making. Do you like the idea that the premier who you elect is the one who gets to make decisions about these? Or would you rather that it still be subject to a much more complicated decision process that kind of limits political interference? And what is your view about the rest of Canada? We know that this has the potential to have a big impact on the rest of Canada. Do you, like many people that the Premier talks about, think that the rest of Canada has already gotten a lot from Alberta and they don't need anything more? Or conversely, are you worried about what the consequences of this move would be to the retirement security of other Canadians? Where's your priority in that? So those are some of the things that we're asking about, and we want to hear from you. And we've got, just again, I'm going to get a wave from Gurinder. Put your hand up there. Gurinder right there, and Kathleen right over there. They have finished. I asked you to put your hands up, and they're going to come out and give you the mic to offer us your opinions and or ask us questions. You'll also see a timer come up on the screen, because we've had a few of these now. And we've learned that it's really important to organize your thoughts a bit, and you'll get 2 minutes to speak and or to ask questions. And what we'll do is we'll pass the mic around to about 4, 5, 6 people at a time. And then those of us here on the panel will try to respond to your questions. And then we'll go to another group of 5 or 6. And then you will see and Parmeet or Irfan, I'm not sure who, though our Irfan will interrupt you rudely and lose friends if you go over 2 minutes on the timing there. So yeah, and at various points, I'm also going to ask people questions just to answer with a show of hands. And every time we do this, we learn from the audience things. So the first time I did this, I just asked one question, and then people came to me afterwards and said, you didn't give me the chance to answer the question a different way. So I'm going to by a show of hands, ask you yes, no, or don't know on this question. So by a show of hands, how many folks in this room believe that we should stay within the Canada Pension Plan? Okay, that's a pretty good thing. How many people here don't know? Totally reasonable. How many people think that we should go to an APP, an Alberta Pension Plan? Few people there. Okay, good enough. Okay, so I appreciate that show of hands, and we'll do a couple more of those over the course of the conversation. So now what I'm going to do is turn it over to you. So I think we already have one person in the back there who has a few things to say. And so just introduce yourself and take note of the timer there, my friend. Okay.
Okay. Here's the deal with regards to this situation. Here's the report from LifeWorks. It took me several calls just to get a copy of. I was told I could print it off. I went to the website. It wouldn't print off. It's 95 pages. Then I said, well, they said, oh, well, we got to watch the money, so we can't send you a copy. Okay? So but the answer is they also get things blatantly wrong. At the end, when you go to page 92, you will find a reference to the amendment that has to be done to the Canada Pension Plan, which says 30% of the population of the provinces and 30% of the population. It isn't. It's 33% of the provinces and 50% of the population. They are rank amateurs, okay? The other thing is that basically all they have done, and my objection to this, is the performance they've had under AIMCO on the Heritage Trust Fund, where in point of fact, they started a Heritage Trust Fund 10 years before the Norwegian Sovereign Wealth Fund. The Heritage Trust Fund is worth about 20 billion. Do you know how much the Heritage Trust, the Norwegian one is? It's 1.3 trillion. So obviously socialists can't manage money. And the conservatives are in charge of it. I wouldn't touch them with a 10-foot pole. They will do the same thing they do all the time, is fritter away the money and then point the finger at somebody else. They are impossible. And Danielle's middle name, I've given her, is Pandora. She goes and creates chaos every day and then wants to blame somebody else because she doesn't know what she's doing. She thinks she's still a talk show radio host. We've got 4 seconds left, and that's what she should go back to do.
Hi. When I first heard about this idea a few years ago, it occurred to me that we should be able to structure it so that each individual Albertan can choose for themselves, either through their HR department or a checkbox on their tax return. And today, just browsing through the Canada Pension Act, on page 26, there's some stuff about how an individual can opt out of the Canada Pension Plan. And so it seems to me that there already is some mechanism, and handling the payouts at the back end, figuring out who worked where and where they live now, and whether it's going to be the Quebec Pension Plan or the CPP that has to make the payouts. That seems to be a lot more complicated than managing it on the front end. And it just diffuses the whole debate. Each person can choose for themselves.
Thank you. Is it working?
Yes, hello. If this scheme goes through, I'll be long dead. I don't want my pension plan to be messed around with. It's well managed in the CPP. anybody should realize that your money in a big pot is going to earn a lot more than in a little pot. And I think the money should be, it's independent, it's not run by the government, which I think it will be run by under the UCP. I think the money that's being spent on this stupid referendum idea, on this whole plan, should be better spent on healthcare, education, on climate mitigation. And I'm very angry at the slush fund that they want to set up with my pension money.
Hello? All right. Dear Rachel, thank you very much for being at today's town hall. Do you remember back in 2018 when Quebec was telling us that we couldn't cross their province with an oil sands pipeline to the East Coast? You remember that? You didn't appreciate Legault calling our oil dirty. And I quote what you said that day. He needs to get off his high horse. He needs to understand not only is our product not dirty, but it actually funds the schools, the hospitals, the roads, and potentially some of the hydroelectricity infrastructure in Quebec. That's through equalization payments, which Quebec gets the lion's share. Do you remember how Morneau snuck into his omnibus budget bill, keeping the old formula for equalization payments without telling the provinces or us citizens about it? Also, when a referendum was held during the last municipal elections in 2021, the question was about removing equalization payments from the Constitution. 62% of Albertans voted yes, which probably included some of the people here as well. So the Alberta Pension Plan is actually a legitimate way to reduce equalization payments to Ottawa, especially Quebec. Shouldn't reducing equalization payments be considered a big positive for our province? Thank you very much.
Thank you. Who will coordinate in the group? So on that side, there is a question, and once we have 5 questions, then I will give the opportunity to Rachel and Alice to answer.
I've got 2 concerns. The first actually has to do with low-income seniors. There's about 74,000 of them in this province. Danielle, the ads, everything else we've seen is supposedly saying that we could get $10,000, seniors that is, up front, and then another, who knows, probably another $100 a month, give or take. A senior that makes $20,000 right now is going to lose their guaranteed income supplement that next year. Their Alberta Senior Pension Benefit Plan that they get as well will go down to about $4 per month. These are real facts. I'm quoting them off of the seniors' income tax return. I don't think that makes any sense whatsoever. The $10,000 is going to cost that senior $1,000 in income tax that year, so now it's down to $9,000. Being removed from the GIS and the Alberta Seniors Benefit means that that person will lose another $4,000 to $5,000 the following year. After year 3, that senior will now be in the red. And in addition, a lot of low-income seniors are living in subsidized housing, 30% of their total income. So that $10,000 now means that they've lost another $3,000. I don't see how that makes sense. And quickly also in the LifeWorks study, we talk about numbers. They glossed over the fact that there's over 100,000 temporary provincial workers in this province all the time. There's 100,000 federal workers in this province, and also for corporations. All of them contribute to this plan. They retire elsewhere. The table is wrong. They always cite to page 48, 49. I suggest that we all look at it. If you retire in Quebec, your benefits are paid in Quebec. If you retire in Ontario, your benefits are in Ontario, not contributed to people here in Alberta. Thank you.
Thank you. I think I will have a question. I'll start with you, Rachel, if you want to answer these, and then.
Sure. So there's a few interesting points that were made there. I think pretty much all of the points that were made by our first speaker with respect to the LifeWorks report, absolutely correct. It is rife with errors. So it's, and I could spend a long time, I think Samir could spend a long time too, going through all the details of it, but I think one of the things that sort of, the most regular of Albertans can see this idea that, we are 15% of the population, and the idea that we would walk away with 53% of the fund doesn't make sense. And so selling Albertans on a pension plan using numbers that are premised on the idea of getting 53% of the fund is not an honest conversation to be having with Albertans. I heard one fellow was talking about the capacity to choose for yourself under the CPP. I don't know if you know anything about that, Samir, because I'm not, I think that's kind of limited, but maybe, or for small business folks or something, I don't know. Is it small business folks? Yeah. Right. So that piece about being able to choose for yourself up front is for folks that are like independent business people. They can either choose to be part of CPP, so they're actually paying both sides of it, the employer's side and their own side. But there isn't flexibility for people who are employees and who employ others. In that case, it is in fact a mandatory program, which is of course why it has some strength, because it has that consistency in the ongoing contribution. So it's a bit different, but I, for instance, know lots of farmers. If you were to do a survey of farmers, half of them contribute to both sides to CPP, to have CPP, and the other half don't. And that is true that those kinds of folks don't necessarily need to. I would say, I pretty much, love the idea of being very concerned about who is, and I think it's really important to understand that pensions are designed to be stable. They're not designed to be venture capital funds. And Danielle Smith has said things that make it seem as though she thinks a pension fund would be akin to her own venture capital fund. And that is worrisome, because venture capital funds lose money as often as they make money. And honestly, that's with good managers who are skilled, and I'm not convinced that our premier necessarily meets that description. So it's very important that the fund be managed as independently as possible. And one of the things that I tend to say to people that gets, anyway, it's a bit boring, but the reality is that the Canada Pension Plan now, you can change it if you have a requisite number of provinces and the federal government agreeing. You can change contribution levels, you can change both premiums by employers and workers. You can change benefit levels. You can change the rules around investment. You can do that, but you need a very high level of agreement between the government and multiple provinces. And what that does is it hedges against one particular political agenda in one part of the province. It means that we basically are relying on the sort of reasonability of the greatest number of Canadians. The last time there was a very a gradual change to CPP in order to increase in the long term down the road the benefits to retirees was ultimately in 2019, but it was negotiated over 4 years. And the reason that was able to happen was because we had this very historic moment when Alberta, very surprisingly, elected an NDP government, and there was an overlap between the Alberta NDP, the Manitoba NDP, the Ontario government of the time, and the government in the Atlantic provinces, as well as the federal government, and we all agreed that we needed to improve CPP. But it's very rare that happens. Whereas if we had an Alberta pension plan, literally any day of the week, the cabinet could go behind closed doors and write regulations to change benefits, contributions, and investment policy, which is why it is inherently much less secure. As far as the points made about Quebec and the challenges we had with getting that pipeline built, I will say this: we are a federation, and there are times where we disagree. But my view is that when we have political differences as a federation, it is up to politicians and leaders and governments to negotiate through those disagreements. We do not use your pension funds as leverage in political fights. This isn't money going into Alberta coffers versus Quebec coffers versus Ottawa coffers. This is money going into your pockets. It is your pension fund now, yesterday, and into the future. So final point, in terms of, I think I kind of addressed this at the front end in terms of how the proposed, I think your point was that the proposed increases are just enough to knock people off of certain entitlements. Potentially true, but also I would argue probably not even relevant because I don't buy those proposed increases. I think the proposed increases that are being sold are arising from this deeply flawed LifeWorks report, and at best will maintain the same level. So, did you want to add anything, Samir?
Yeah, thank you. I think, Abid, is there anything you want to add? Okay. Samir, and while people are completing their questions in 2 minutes, my colleagues, I will appreciate it. They also try to answer them in 2 minutes. I'm not saying anything to read it, so yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, the one thing I want to say, I guess, is the one thing I've heard here is that your pension is yours, right? And we've said that a number of times. It's not just a slogan. It is actually the money that you are putting away for your future retirement. It is not for governments to use. And so when I hear comments, and I mean, thank you very much for talking about it in context of equalization and what's going on with the rest of the country. As Rachel pointed out, this is different. This is very different because these are the funds that we as individuals are counting on to fund our retirements. And so I really don't think it's honest to be saying that, oh, Albertans have overcontributed. Albertans have not overcontributed. Alberta has not overcontributed. We are a younger population. That means that when people are younger, they're putting more money away. But if you move to Halifax, if you move to Victoria, that pension will still be there for you. And
Thank you. There was a question in row 5. There was before. I will get on the Sure.
Sorry, I want to talk about stranded assets. They give it to Danielle. She's liable to invest it in the oil patch, which is about to experience a serious decline as the world transitions. She's in denial about that, but it's going to happen. So I don't think my pension should be in something that stands a good chance of becoming a stranded asset.
I'm a senior collecting CPP currently, and I've just been hearing a lot of misconceptions about what Canada Pension actually is and what the fund actually means in the Canada Pension. So Canada Pension, as you should know, Samir, is a pay-as-you-go pension plan. So Alberta could withdraw right now, not take any of that fund with us, and we would still get our pensions. Because our contributions, pay-as-you-go means contributions now pay out the people who are collecting, like myself. And at the end of that, there's a surplus, and that goes into a fund that funds future shortfalls, and interest from that fund is supposed to cover future shortfalls from an aging population. Now, that's the way the pension plan works. It was written in 65, and I love reading laws. In 65, it was written, and Ontario put in a buyer's remorse clause. And buyer's remorse clause says that at any time, a province can withdraw and take the money that they put in as if the Canada pension plan never existed, that they had an Alberta pension plan all along. And Ontario put that in because they thought they would be paying more in. But fast forward, in the 2000s, Alberta was the #1 contributor of monies to the Canada pension plan. Their surplus was 4.5 times what Ontario's is, and 5 times what BC is. And those are the only ones that were contributing surplus to this fund. So Alberta is entitled to probably more than 53% of the surplus fund, and that's what the numbers say.
Thank you. Row 5.
I've attended about 3 of the UCP town halls on the Alberta pension plan, and one thing Mr. Dinning likes to talk about is having an adult conversation about an Alberta pension plan. And one of the questions that seems to come up often is the screeners seem to really like to have is for people to ask, well, am I going to get just as many benefits as I am getting from CPP? And Mr. Dinning often likes to say, yes, absolutely, you will get just as many benefits if we move to an APP. And then he stops answering the question. He doesn't want to have an adult conversation. He wants to have a superficial conversation. Because yes, the legislation governing CPP says that if you leave, your benefits must be as good or better wherever you go. But then what? What about a year from now, 2 years from now, 3 years from now? What assurances, what guarantees do we have from a pension plan that you will get just as good benefits as a CPP? There is none. And yet Mr. Dinning likes to say that you will, but he doesn't like to talk about the future. So yes, okay, go ahead, leave. You will probably get better benefits than you will with the CPP in the first year. But what happens when AIMCO does what they did to the Heritage Trust Fund, as the gentleman mentioned before? What happens when the APP goes down to 0, and then we're looking at the rest of Canada thinking, what did we do? Why did we leave? And so I'm wondering, from representatives up front, have you had any discussions with the Alberta government about what assurances they're going to give to us as Albertans that 5, 15, 20, 50 years from now, we will maintain the same level of benefits that CPP recipients receive?
Thank you. It's a good question. We'll answer it once we have 4 or 5 questions.
Good evening. Again, thank you for the town hall here. It's greatly appreciated. My name is Lee Kowalski from Glenmore, and I think this is really an issue about integrity and trust. I started contributing 40 years ago as a small businessman, had 50 employees, have pensions, and the pension fund that we contributed to has $576 billion, and it's always gone up overall. And I think you want to have someone who knows how to run a pension fund better than someone who doesn't know how to run a government. And I think that's important. I'd like to ask is maybe this is geared towards Samir here, but it's my money. And I would like to do the deep dive to find out legally what rights do I have and other Canadians have to get money, the money that we've contributed back. So let's say something did happen and the pension question was so nebulous that people believed in it. It was so delusional that they went for it. And then I want to get my money back. I don't want to have my pension money or my son's future pension money. He just started working with these people who have a bad track record. So can we perhaps investigate what the legal rights would be? We have to get litigious, like in the U.S., and have a class action suit. Did they actually come back and say, sorry, this was crafted in 1964. A lot of things have changed. And I really would like to get my money, and we're going to litigate it if needed. The second part of my thoughts is the referendum question. Some of you may be old enough to remember what Quebec's question was in 1995. You're going to stay in Canada. You're going to leave Canada. You'll have the passport. You're going to have the money. You're going to have everything. It was like a kid getting all the benefits, but none of the responsibilities. And I think that question really has to be a tough one, and maybe spooling up the media to make sure that the current regime is held to account.
Thank you. As Parmeet mentioned in the beginning, if you want to ask questions in Punjabi, Urdu, Hindi, I think that's the capacity right now in this room. You're more than welcome to do that. There's one comment that you were saying that you won't trust UCP. I think Rachel mentioned in one of the debates that a government that was not able to buy kids Tylenol correctly should not be trusted with people's pension retirement. But
thank you for letting me to have a voice here. Before today's meeting, I tried to do some due diligence yesterday, try to find out how much each province contributed to CPP by years, and how much each province withdraw by years. So I went to Government of Canada, tried to find the information. And then I went to the CPP Investment Board, the website. I can find nothing. So if any of you have this valuable information, please let me know. And I guess we all should know this important information before we jump into anything politically biased. Let the facts speak for itself, right? Okay, so when I was online trying to find the information, the only thing is valuable for me is from May 9th, 2019. That was 4.5 years ago. Fraser Institute, the website, they have a simple study which gives a number of from 2008 to 2017, 10 years, and it clearly says Alberta is the biggest contributor to CPP. It says it's 4 times greater than Ontario and nearly 5.5 times greater than BC, even though those two provinces have a lot bigger population than Alberta, especially Ontario. So this makes me very uncomfortable because I don't believe they would lie, and which is from 4.5 years ago, right? So if anybody
yeah, certainly but provinces do not contribute to CPP. It's individuals who contribute. It's their deferred earnings, so somebody will explain it in further detail. Go ahead.
Hello. I'm here just for the last 14 years and I have not contributed much for the CPP, but when I just reached at the age of 70, I got just $20 per month this CPP. So I was glad to know, and I want to secure it for my son and for my grandson. And one thing more, I fear that CPP, this attack on CPP or this fragmentation of CPP, whether it will affect our old age security. So if it affects old age security, then I'm worried about it.
Thank you. I think we can try to answer some of these questions and then we'll take it next.
Up there. God, I don't know who works for who. So, I'll go as quickly as I can here. I think one fellow was saying, how can we get our money back? That was one issue that you raised, and I think it's very possible that if we got to that point that 51% of people, or let's say 45%, who cares? Because again, you're not even bound by the referendum. 2% of people voted to leave CPP and they chose to do it. What could we do? And obviously, I'm not going to say that there wouldn't be value to trying to go to court and using litigation, and so, because you never know what could happen. I will say that although there's historic contractual relationships around pension funds and the obligation to the pensioners or the beneficiaries of pension funds, because they're essentially a trust, that because this is a creature of statute, ultimately, if the statute says certain people can do certain things to take other people out, that is going to undermine the general law around trustee relationships with pension funds. So that's my concern, but I'd be the last person if that ever happened to say don't go to the courts, because you'd want to do anything you could. But I'd be worried about it. Your issue about the referendum question, very important question. We debated that a lot in the House, and we said the need, constitutional referendum questions must be tested in the legislature, and the legislature should at least get a chance to debate it and to hear from people, and other people can do the things they do when things go into legislature. These guys specifically linked this legislation to a different type of referendum that doesn't require that the legislature review the question. They did that on purpose. So, you all know that survey they put out where they asked you whether you wanted to be in the pension, stay in the pension or not. You don't? That's because they never asked you. They put out a thing they called the survey, and they never asked anybody whether they actually agreed with the idea. So I'm worried about the referendum question. With respect to the concerns about who's contributed more, let's be clear. Irfan made, of course, one point, that even though provinces have this elevated legal role with respect to what is otherwise a pension, provinces do not contribute, just like there's so much misunderstanding around equalization and that whole issue. Individuals contribute. And it is true that we have a younger population, and we also have a higher percentage of our population that's employed, and we work more hours a week, typically. And so people who live in Alberta do contribute more. The people that draw on but as one person over there identified, if you live in Alberta and then retire to BC, and you draw on that while you're in BC, it's credited to BC is then takes responsibility for the fact that you now live there and you are collecting your pension and you contributed to Alberta. And so we know that a lot of people do that. They work here and then they retire somewhere else. They work here and they go back to their originating province and they never actually move here totally. And so the contribution reads as though it's from here, and the draw reads as though it's from the other province. But that's called portability. That's what it means to be Canadian, that you can move all over the country, and that's what a lot of Canadians do. A lot of Canadians work here, and then they go to the other parts of the country to stay all. The other thing I will identify there, though, is that that Fraser Institute report talked about a very unique time in Alberta's history, 2008 to 2017. Let us remember, the people of Quebec, when we first started CPP, were convinced they had a younger population, things were just cooking in Quebec, and so they decided they were going to do their own thing. Flash forward 40 or 50, 60 years, and Quebecers now pay higher premiums, and they in order to get the same benefit. Because over 60 years, their demographics and their economy change. And so it's not helpful really to look at a 10-year window, particularly in a place like Alberta, because we have the most volatile economy in the country. Sometimes we have more money than God, and sometimes oil goes into negative numbers, and we suddenly have a $9 billion deficit. I know, I've been there. So the reality is that it's a very volatile province, and so it's important to not take a small window when you're looking at Alberta's fiscal reliability. And I probably talked too long, sorry. Did you want to add anything? Anybody? Did you want to add anything? No? Good, okay.
I think we will go to the next question. किसी अगर को पंजाबी चीज़ सवाल होवे तो ज़रूर तुसी सवाल कर सकते हैं. गुरिंदर.
Hi, I'm from the Northeast here. I'm originally from Quebec, and the way they work it out in Quebec is that you the longer you pay into to their pension plan, the more money you're gonna get. But I'm looking around the room, and most of Alberta is getting older. So we are paying less into that fund. So how much are we gonna get back? My mother paid less. The pension, the check that she would get was $87 a month. What's that gonna do for you? So of course we have to go into help and stuff. But we also use the pension and try to invest. Quebec tried to invest in Hydro-Quebec, Northern Telecom. Other bigger, badder companies tanked. Their pension fund, she brought it up before, died out. The kids have to bring it up. They're paying a higher premium. We're going to be stuck in that same situation. How do we avoid it when we're going to be invested in something they want to take away, which is our oil and gas? They want to go green. If you go green, how are we going to invest in our natural resources here in Alberta if we only invest in the gas?
Thank you, Kathleen.
I'm here so that I can understand the other side because my mind is made up. I'm hearing a lot of talk about slush funds. And I have watched the NDP use, I'm a business owner, quite a large business. I've watched some of it unionized, some of it not, and I've watched the NDP use union contributions during political elections, and those contributions are mandatory. So talking about slush funds and Danielle's gonna jump and use all this money, regardless, I think it's hypocritical to say that. My second point is, as I approach the age of receiving a pension, my whole life, all I've ever heard is this pension sucks. From every senior that I've ever talked to, they're receiving not even a living, they can't live. So this kind of dialogue, whether you believe in the APP or not, something needs to be done, just like something needed to be done with healthcare. It was broken, it needs to be fixed. Yeah, that's respectful. Anyhow, what I would say also is this pension plan that everyone complains about that isn't large enough, don't forget the day you die, there's nothing left. By definition, a pension should go to your estate. I will never collect all the money that as an employee and an employer that I put into this fund. I think we should look at alternatives, not saying, I'll listen to everything, but we need to have a dialogue and find something that's better for Alberta.
Thank you, Glenn. Before I go to the next question, I was part of NDP government. The first bill we brought forward was to ban union and corporate donation to political parties. That credit goes to NDP.
Thank you. The two issues here why I'm here today and the two issues that concern me really is the younger generation of Alberta and the very older generation of Alberta. For me, I was one of the fortunate ones. I came in 1975 from Ireland. I had a trade. I worked for Canadian Pacific Railway. We had an employer pension. I contributed some pension in Ireland, so I get some of that back. And also the CPP. I was lucky, I'm fortunate to retire at 55. But here's my concern. I have two children. One of them is 35, the other one is 43. Sorry, I get emotional. The thing is, they don't have pension plans. They don't have company pension plans. More companies today don't have defined pension plans. Now, my pension plan at CP was contributed employee-employer. But I've seen people, and I was at the convention of the NDP, and what concerns me very, very much is the elderly in this province. Someone just mentioned it, they cannot buy the sustained medications, life things, rent. Look, we don't have to go play with figures here. The UPC have already spent at least $10-12 million. And yes, she's great for creating jobs for Preston Manning, for Denny. To the people that put me in the first place. The people don't watch that. $2 million for Alberta Healthcare. I know it's not pension, but $2 million to Preston money to sit on his arse and talk about Alberta Healthcare. And last week, the nurses are being attacked again because they come onto the floor and she sent them, Heather Smith from the Nurses Union, there may be layoffs. This is the problem we have. I spent 21 hours in the Peter Lougheed trying to get a doctor. 21 hours I spent in it. And that was in the emergency. I was sent to the emergency 21 hours. And then to get a test, I live in Coral Springs. Do you know where my test was? High River. At 6 o'clock in the morning. Sorry, I know the clock. I don't look at the clock. I have the same clock as the radio. Immigrants here that don't know what's going on.
Thank you. We will not talk at each other, please.
And the people have
Thank you. Thank you.
on the streets.
Thank you. I do recognize that access to healthcare is an issue and it needs to be fixed, but thank you. Kathleen?
My name is David Phillips, and I've lived in this province for many years, but I feel a Canadian first, only an Albertan second. And I get really angry when I see people acting like a spoiled child in a big family, arguing that this one's getting more than that, or more than me. We're Canadians first, and Albertans second.
Thank you. Couldn't agree more. When I migrated, we migrated to Canada, like many of us will say. We didn't know where Alberta is. For all our purposes, we migrated to Canada, so couldn't agree more. Sure.
My comments fall along that same line. I immigrated to this country as a child with my parents who considered for many years where they were going to move our family to. We lived in South Africa under apartheid. And they decided on Canada. So yes, we immigrated to Canada, and every day I feel grateful and thankful to be here as a citizen of this country. And I'm very proud to have paid into the Canada Pension Plan all my working life. I'm 65 now. I'm going to start drawing on it shortly. But honestly, I don't give a crap if we paid more, or who paid more, or who paid less. We are all Canadians. And I don't want us, our pension funds, whatever this government deems to be Alberta's pension funds, to be withdrawn from the Canada Pension Plan to the detriment of our fellow Canadians. We all pay in, we all receive, no matter where we live. And that's
Thank you, that's pretty powerful. I think I'll conclude your answer, but one question was overlooked. Gershon already asked the question. CPP, old age security, is a different program, but senior benefit, they include CPP, old age security, and then Alberta senior pension. 3 components to it, but the major one is, I guess, CPP and old age security. Rachel.
Okay, well, I'll try to be quick, and then I think are we going to do some, we'll do some Punjabi. Okay, so, so we talked a bit about Quebec and how it didn't end up very well for them, and it is true that, as one of the fellows back there indicated, is that Quebec did take some of their pension funds to invest in provincial economic development efforts, and that is a problem, and it was a scandal. It was a scandal, and their funds were jeopardized. I mean, they still have a pretty solid fund now. It's just that it's not as strong as CPP. So I don't mean to say that it died or anything like that. I won't overstate it, but they did lose out as a result of politically driven economic development based venture fund investment protocols. I will take the time to just repeat a little bit of what Irfan said, because it was my first bill as the Premier of Alberta, and that was, in fact, to ban union and corporate donations from from politics. So that is true. It happened, and it has happened ever since. I've been fundraising for my party ever since, and I can tell you quite definitely that we do not take corporate donations and we don't take union donations. It's not. I do agree, though. I agree with one of the comments. Actually, there was a strange alignment between two of our commenters there about the inadequacy of pension of CPP. And it is true, like CPP is one of the best publicly orchestrated, everybody gets it, universal pension plans in the world. But relative to the better pension plans that people get with certain employers, big industrial employers, public sector employers, it's still at its full amount, its maximum amount right now. But people here in the room would know the maximum you can get off of it is a little over $1,300 a month, and we do know that's not enough to live well. Or even barely. And so we know it's not enough. The answer, though, I would argue, is not to reject a defined benefit plan and move to where you save enough so that you can give some to your kids, or conversely, you don't save enough and you don't have anything, and also your kids don't get anything. The idea around any kind of defined benefit plan is to equalize contributions, to share contributions, and to give a bare minimum to folks. That's what a defined benefit is for. And our fellow up here rightly identified. We've seen a lot of employers move away from defined benefit plans. And that means that people retiring 15, 20 years from now are going to struggle more than people retiring now, because there are fewer defined benefit plans. So the answer should be to strengthen our public defined benefit plan, not undermine it. Canadians First, you guys said your thing about Canadians First and caring about what happens to the rest of Canada, and thank you for that. I do often actually ask people to do a show of hands, but I think I kind of got that from folks just in terms of your reaction, so thank you for that sentiment. And I'm going to leave it there, and if you have a couple comments, that's great, and then we're going to move. Do we want to do some pledging? Oh, in the closing remarks, go leave it.
No, we still have time for a couple of questions, one from each side. Yeah, sure.
I just want to step back to the comment that somebody made. Hey, can we actually change how or withdraw from the plan or sue? Let's be clear. A decision to withdraw from the CPP is irreversible. There is a mechanism in the law to withdraw from the CPP. There is no mechanism in the law for Quebec to come back into it, for example, or if Alberta leaves to come back into it. This is it. This is why the fight is so important. This is why I'm so glad that you're here trying to get more information on it, because this is the story. If you want to take Albertans out of the Canada Pension Plan, you only have to win once. And that's why it's really, really important for us to fight, because we have to keep pressure on to make sure that this jewel and gem of retirement security remains for us. The other thing, this is very important, is that a defined benefit pension plan, as Rachel pointed out, it means that no matter how long you live, that pension is coming at you. And you don't need to worry about it, you don't need to manage it. What other government program can you think about with a 60-year record of success where the checks just come? And the CPP is that program. By the way, I'm going to tell a personal story about Krista DePoe, because I worked in finance for a long time. CPPIB was one of my clients. Krista DePoe, the manager of Quebec Pension Plan Assets, was one of my clients. The Krista DePoe building is just absolutely gorgeous. They literally use it for piano concerts. They were tuning a piano the day that I was there visiting my clients. Lovely, just off Old Town Montreal. That's what pensioners need for.
We should describe that as Quebec.
Yeah, that's Quebec's. That is Quebec's pension plan manager. That is what they paid for. The CPPIB building is in Sunbank Tower, is very ugly. You know, it's just like a nondescript skyscraper that is filled with cubicles from end to end. And I know who do I want managing my money. I want the guy with the dumpy old office.
We'll have time for 2 more questions. Just to add on what Samir was saying, that there was a report from federal actuary that CPP is good for 75 years, it can sustain itself for coming 75 years. That's how strong the CPP is, and there is economies of scale being in a bigger pool. So, Gurinder and then Kathleen, and then we will wrap up. Rachel will answer the question, Parmeet will explain discussion in Punjabi, and that's, I guess, will be the end of it.
So a lot of great points already been mentioned about economies of scale, about AIMCO consistently performing poorly relative to CPPIB. There's also, I wanted to highlight how well the CPPIB's reputation is globally. It consistently tops, it's the gold standard by the way, it consistently tops lists of world's best managed funds when it comes to transparency, accountability, and governance. I cannot emphasize how great they are at what they do. The other thing I also wanted to mention is, just to clarify a bit of inaccuracy, the Canada Pension Plan is no longer a pay-as-you-go fund. It moved to a hybrid structure 2 decades ago, coinciding with the setup of the CPPIB. So the other thing also about the economic headwinds that our sectors face when it comes to like oil and gas, of course, there's the livestock industry and the regular plant agriculture industry with our droughts, climate change, and the mining sector is also a mixed bag. We're going to need tremendous amounts of help from the feds and other provinces, and this is a distraction that we are. Look, there are fights for which I will stand right beside you, and I have my own criticisms of Ottawa, and we will fight together. But this is not a fight that makes any mathematical, financial, or actuarial sense.
That's it. Thank you. 22 seconds to spare. That's the best. Kathleen.
Hello, my name is Misty. I'm from Calgary, Buffalo. Thanks for holding this tonight. Although I am decades away from being someone who will need to draw upon the funds of the CPP, I would like to take the conversation and questions in a different direction. Let's suppose Alberta pursues the path. The feds are not letting this happen without a fight. You think they're just going to hand the money over? Absolutely not. The federal conservative government is not a fan. So, I was hoping with that in mind, the panel could maybe be able to describe to us what that would look like. I'm sure lawsuits abound, years to go, and who would be paying for those lawsuits? Thank you.
I think that will be all of you now, certainly. I think that's all we have for everyone. Last.
Thank you. Just a quick question. What do I do? I've written to Jim Denning, I've written to Danielle Smith, I've expressed my objection. What do I do when I have a government that isn't going to listen to me? That they are going to steamroll over anything I want. I am not for this. So what do I do? What can I do?
Thank you. I think Rachel will explain that. I will just make one last comment and then I will sit down and we will conclude that we had more time to discuss this here tonight than we had in the legislature. Let me say this again, that tonight we had more time to discuss the CPP than we had in legislature. Reason? What UCP did, they used their numbers to pass a closure motion, time allocation motion. What that motion does, that it limits the debate
to the time that's stated in the motion, and the motion was for 1 hour. That you get 1 hour to talk about this important issue.
It's more than 2 minutes.
So, I do recognize that, and I want to thank each and every one of you for coming here, for sharing your thoughts. Thank you so much, and I will hand things over to Rachel and then
okay, so I think just the only couple things that I would say in answer to a couple of the questions, and then I'm going to wrap it up, is in terms of, with the feds not wanting to go ahead with this, the conservative leader not wanting to go ahead with it, the liberals, the Democrats not wanting to go ahead with it, it will be a big fight. I suspect it probably a solid decade, at least a decade. The question becomes, how easily can we reverse course and stop this madness once we've given notice? Hopefully fairly easily, but there's no question that I would estimate that it would be a decade of legal fights to get to that point, but that doesn't mean we don't have to worry about it, because it creates instability and investment uncertainty. And I've already heard people say to me today, just today I had 3 different retired people say to me in different contexts, well, enjoy that, I'm moving. I won't be here when this happens. I'll be moving out of here because I'm not letting these guys touch my pension. And with that, we lose spending power. We lose we lose population, and that's bad news. We happen to know that many people actually continue working past 65, and we have a labor shortage. And we will literally have people leave and find extra work somewhere else and still be contributing, because you can contribute. You can collect while you're still working. And those folks could easily just leave, so it's a problem. Anyway, in terms of what we could do, thank you for that question. It was a really good question. So, this is still unfolding. Let me say, first of all, that, coming to things like this, really important. Having your opinion heard, no matter whether we agree or disagree, very important. Asking questions and sharing information the best that you know that you have, also very important. One person back there who I think is in the undecided or perhaps even pro-APP camp made a very good point in terms of needing us to get good information. So we must demand good and careful information, and make sure that when we're talking to our friends and neighbors about it, that we make sure people are talking with the correct set of facts. And quite honestly, the correct set of facts right now is that we do not currently have access to the correct set of facts. So going forward though, we'll be doing more of these kinds of things. We have a petition, which if you haven't signed yet, you can go and sign it. Check out our website, albertasfuture.ca. Everything that we will be doing on this will be rolled out there. Going forward, we are going to be coming up with different ways to engage more Albertans on this issue because it's so important. We cannot rely on the provincial government to share information because we know that they're not going to do it without putting their finger on the scale and perhaps just turning the scale right upside down. So what we are going to be doing soon is signing up folks to go out door knocking and talking to their neighbors. We have some folks that are already doing that now, and if you're interested, you can reach out to us and we can let you know how to do that and who to connect with to be able to do that. We need to make sure that this is an informed and engaged decision when and if, not if, but when it happens. We need to make sure, in my view, because I do have an opinion, that enough Albertans are fully informed of the consequences of this and take every opportunity to tell this government their views so that they back away from it because they understand that it will be the end of them. That is, I think, the way to go forward. So please keep in touch with us, albertasfuture.ca, as well as we'll be, the Alberta NDP will also be doing some door knocking, and we will have a sign campaign rolling out in the next few weeks as well, and people can sign up for that as well. So there's some of the things, and it will continue to develop. Thank you all so much for coming tonight, and thank you. Before you clap, I'm going to hand over to Parmeet, and he's going to summarize the last hour and a half in Punjabi. Please, you'd be surprised how quickly he does that. And so please let him get through with that, and thank you all again for caring so much about your province, your community, your neighbors. Thank you all for coming.
Thank you all for coming here. Trust me, I won't take another half an hour to explain Punjabi. I'll just wrap in 5 minutes. So we have lots of Punjabi-speaking people from the different senior organizations. When people do ask them, so they do know what to say. As we all are, I'll do start in Punjabi in a minute. Yeah, because like all of us, lots of Albertans are concerned about the CPP. So, ਇਹਦਾ CPP ਦਾ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਹੈਗਾ ਜੀ ਆਪਣੇ ਅਲਬਰਟਾ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ 1960 ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਕੈਨੇਡਾ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਸ਼ੁਰੂ ਕੀਤੀ ਸੀਗੀ ਜੀ ਕੈਨੇਡਾ ਪੈਨਸ਼ਨ ਪਲਾਨ, ਜਿਹੜਾ ਕਿ ਦੁਨੀਆ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਇੱਕ ਨੰਬਰ ਤੇ ਮੰਨਿਆ ਜਾਂਦਾ ਹੈ। ਤੇ ਉਦੋਂ ਕੁਬੈਕ ਨੇ ਆਪਦਾ ਵੱਖਰਾ ਪੈਨਸ਼ਨ ਪਲਾਨ ਬਣਾਇਆ ਸੀ। ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਕੀ ਹੈ ਜੀ, ਉੱਥੇ ਉਹ ਪੇ ਵੱਧ ਕਰਦੇ ਨੇ, ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਪੈਨਸ਼ਨ ਘੱਟ ਮਿਲਦੀ ਹੈ ਜੀ। ਤੇ ਹੁਣ ਕੀ ਹੋ ਰਿਹਾ, ਤੁਸੀਂ ਕਿਤੇ ਵੀ ਜਾਓਗੇ ਕੈਨੇਡਾ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ, ਕਿਸੇ ਵੀ ਪ੍ਰੋਵਿੰਸ ਵਿੱਚ ਜਾਂਦੇ ਹੋ, ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਥੋੜੀ ਪੈਨਸ਼ਨ ਦਾ ਕੋਈ ਫਿਕਰ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੈਗਾ ਜੀ। ਜੇ ਕੱਲ ਕੋਈ APP ਬਣਾਉਂਦੇ ਉਹਦਾ ਇਹ ਨਹੀਂ ਪਤਾ ਜੀ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਦੂਜੀ ਪ੍ਰੋਵਿੰਸ 'ਚ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਮਿਲਦੀ ਹੈ ਜਾਂ ਨਹੀਂ ਮਿਲਦੀ ਜੀ। ਦੂਜੀ ਗੱਲ ਹੈ, ਜਿਹੜਾ ਗਵਰਨਮੈਂਟ ਨੇ $7.5 ਮਿਲੀਅਨ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਤੁਹਾਡਾ ਟੈਕਸ ਪੇਅਰ ਦਾ ਪੈਸਾ ਵੇਸਟ ਕੀਤਾ, ਉਹ ਤੁਹਾਡਾ ਪੈਸਾ ਸਿਰਫ ਐਡਵਰਟਾਈਜ਼ਮੈਂਟ ਦੇ ਉੱਤੇ ਜੀ। ਸੋ ਅਸੀਂ ਇਸ ਚੀਜ਼ ਦਾ ਵਿਰੋਧ ਕਰਦੇ ਹਾਂ ਜੀ। ਬਾਕੀ I will start something in English because lots of people are start leaving as well. I was saying like this pension is your pension, this is your money, it belongs to you, not to government. If Danielle Smith wants to gamble, she should have gambled with her own money, not with your money, not with my money, not with her money. And we have lots of MLAs here. Our offices are open for you. Please do come anytime, book an appointment, just call us. Because we like to talk to you. We like to hear the concerns so we can talk to the government, not like on the other side, like hiding somewhere for the important issues. As you know, a few people have mentioned earlier as well, yes, CPP is one of the biggest issues, but there are lots of work needs to be done. Lots of people are concerned about healthcare, the education, the affordability, and lots of the crime issues are happening, and we all are working on that. And from time to time, we will share with you, and I promise you, we will do another town halls on the different topics as well. And we are working, but we need your support for that. We are here to work for you. We are your employees. Again, thank you very much for coming.
It's the money of working people and their employers who contribute that in order to ensure that there is greater stability when people retire, because that benefits all of us. But it is your money, and your money should not be used as a political weapon or a political tool. It should be used to support a secure and prosperous retirement.
Obviously, a lot of folks here tonight. I mean, there was a number of folks speaking against this. How important was it to have their voices also heard at this time?
Well, you know, personally, I think it's good in order to see what some of the concerns are for folks that are thinking about supporting the leaving CPP. And again, it was a very small group here today, but you know, I understand there's some folks who are angry at Ottawa, and my message to them is that there are other ways to express your anger to Ottawa than to put at risk and put the retirement of fellow citizens in risk.
We all know that there's been lots of money spent on advertising regarding this issue. We all know that this is going to end up in a referendum. Is there any way NDP can stop going to a referendum and spending more money?
Well, they've already passed the legislation that allows them to go to a referendum. So what we can do is continue to talk to Albertans about the actual facts so that the level of support for staying in CPP remain strong so that the UCP decides it's not in their best interest to even have the referendum. But it comes down to Albertans now to make their voice heard. Because the other thing that we're hearing really across the board from Albertans is they do not trust the UCP to run a fair referendum. They've shown themselves unwilling to run a fair referendum thus far. They've been doing ad campaigns to persuade people using fake facts. They haven't been letting people have their voices heard. They've been spending money, taxpayers' dollars money. So we don't trust them to actually run a fair referendum.
On the referendum question here, obviously the referendum for equalization was brought up, 62% for, 48% against that, but the turnout of that vote was 38%.
Yes, that's right.
I mean, one of the lowest turnouts in Albertan history.
That's right.
You know, if there was that kind of turnout that was that low, what kind of confidence could Albertans have that even the referendum would be a valid?
Well, I mean, that again is a very, very important issue. And in other provinces where you've seen referendums, you've had to have a certain percentage of the population engage in order for that referendum to be considered. But this is why we are concerned about what the UCP is doing. They refused to talk to Albertans about their plans for CPP during the election. That was the referendum opportunity. But they ran from it. They hid from it. And now there's so many loopholes around this referendum that they could go ahead with this CPP plan to undermine, to gamble people's pensions, and Albertans will be the losers. So the election was the referendum, quite honestly.
I'm just going to take one friend back here, you guys, then I got to get going.
Yeah.
So sorry.
Do you think this may be all for nothing because the UCP, they could just say we're going to do it anyways?
There is no question that the only way they will not do it is if they think their political future is at risk. Because there's no question that the law they passed does not bind them. The referendum is not binding because of that law. And so as a result, what we know is that Albertans have to make their voices heard and make sure that the UCP understands that they will never get anywhere near government again if these guys go ahead with it.
Last question right here.
Is there any indication that the number of people in the LifeWorks report would be the number that Alberta would even get?
That which?
The LifeWorks report.
Is there any indication that number that's in that report would even become close to the number that Alberta would get?
Oh, absolutely not. It's a joke. It's a complete fantasy, and it shows the cards of this government in that they are prepared to essentially lie to Albertans in order to get them to buy into a plan which is very, very bad for them.
Thanks, guys.
One last question.
Okay, last one, really quick.
Yeah.
We really got to go.
Has been doing lots of town hall meetings.
Yes.
In so far, whatever you've done, what are voices of Albertans so far that you think this whole thing is going to go in what direction?
So we've had about 38,000 people respond to our survey, because we did a survey where we asked the question. And of those 38,000 people, over 90% said they want to stay in the CPP. In halls like this, it's been the same kind of thing over and over. This is our fifth one. And people, I asked the question, and the vast majority of people put up their hands and say they want to stay in CPP. So I'm very confident that that's where most Albertans, what they think and what they believe right now.
Okay, guys, thanks so much.
Thank you.